Good evening, you're watching World News Tonight on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Germany is set to hand over artworks and artefacts looted from Poland during World War II in a high-level summit in Berlin this week. That's according to sources speaking exclusively to TVP World and confirmed tonight by the government in Warsaw. We'll sit down with our Europe Editor Marcin Zaborowski, who broke the story later in the show. But first, the latest headlines.
We are discussing about the future of Ukraine, about the security of Ukraine.
That's Ukraine's Rustem Umerov sitting down for another round of peace talks in Florida.
Thank you. The robots had saved many lives of firefighters.
A French robotics company backs firefighters in the war against Russia. And 3 minutes and 11 seconds in a single breath. A Polish man sets a new world record. Germany will return artefacts stolen from Poland during World War II when the country's leaders meet in Berlin on Monday. TVP World can reveal German officials have been quietly working to identify pieces that remain in their hands but originate from Polish collections. As Sonia Agata-Bischan explains, a set of medieval Teutonic archives and a 14th century sculpture could reportedly be part of the deal.
In a historic event between Berlin and Warsaw, Germany will return valuable art stolen from Poland during World War II, TVP World has learned. Germany would return archives of the Teutonic order looted from Warsaw and a sculpture depicting a saint's head stolen from the Malbork Castle in northern Poland, according to the Onet news platform. The transfer is expected to take place on Monday during a Polish-German intergovernmental meeting in Berlin with the participation of Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the German Chancellor. This is the first such meeting since Friedrich Merz took office. The talks raise hope among analysts.
Lets me hope here that this will be indeed a new phase in these relations is that we now have in Germany a government that looks in very similar ways on the world as the Polish government looks.
But 16% of Polish respondents in a recent poll believe that history remains the biggest issue in Polish-German relations, particularly World War II and the question of reparations. Poland was never compensated for the losses it suffered at the hands of the Germans during World War II. Supporters of the largest Polish opposition parties, Law and Justice and Confederation, are the keenest to seek redress, whereas Germany repeatedly argued that the issue has been legally closed, as under communism Poland was forced to renounce its claims by the Soviet Union.
Maybe there can be found a formula in which some of the issues that Poland still has concerning recent history can be addressed, but I'm afraid this is something that will probably continue to haunt a historical topic that will continue to haunt German-Polish relations.
Historic disputes aside, there is also a more recent point of contention between the two countries: Poland's refusal to extradite a Ukrainian national suspected of the attack on the Nord Stream gas pipeline linking Russia to Germany. In response, co-leader of Alternative for Germany, a party classified as extreme right by German intelligence, went as far as to say that Poland could become a threat to Germany.
Poland did not extradite a wanted criminal, a terrorist, to Germany. And how did the German government react? It did nothing. It said, okay, that can happen.
In the same interview, Tino Kruppala said that he doesn't see a threat to Germany from Russia and that the West shares responsibility for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Analysts warned that AfD's attitude towards Poland could further cripple relations between the two countries.
If the AfD, which is the strongest party in Germany at the moment, is the biggest opposition party and the strongest party according to polls, will be using this anti-Polish card more and more in the political debates, it will even more limit the room of maneuver of the German government to do something positive towards Poland.
During the Monday meeting in Berlin, Tusk is expected to be accompanied by Foreign Affairs Minister Radosław Sikorski and several other ministers. Aside from German-Polish relations, the talks are expected to include security considerations. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Agata-Bischan.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki has canned a planned meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Budapest, just days after Orban travelled to Moscow to sit down with Vladimir Putin. President Nawrocki will head to Hungary on Wednesday, ahead of a summit between the presidents of the Visegrad Group, made up of Poland, Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. But Nawrocki is now limiting his trip to the conference itself, skipping the scheduled FaceTime with Prime Minister Orban. An aide close to the Polish president says Nawrocki believes that, quote, security depends on solidarity, making the cancellation a direct result of Orban's trip to the Kremlin. Moving to Florida now, where Ukrainian and American negotiators are again trying to hash out an end to Russia's war. It comes after another weekend of deadly strikes on Kyiv and follows a dramatic week for Volodymyr Zelensky, in which the president's top aide, Andriy Yermak, was forced to resign amid anti-corruption raids on his home and office. Konrad Golinski reports.
This Sunday, a Ukrainian delegation headed by Security Council Secretary Rustem Umerov is in Florida to continue talks on the Geneva peace plan with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Thankful to President Trump's super team that is supporting us. We are discussing about the future of Ukraine, about the security of Ukraine, about no repetition of aggression of Ukraine, about prosperity of Ukraine, about how to rebuild Ukraine.
The meeting's also being attended by billionaire developer turned special envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. The same two figures, according to this article published in the Wall Street Journal on Friday, met in Miami ahead of the release of the 28-point peace plan presented in Geneva, with Kirill Dmitriev, Vladimir Putin's hand-picked negotiator and head of Russia's sovereign wealth fund. According to the WSJ, the three explored an expansive plan linking a potential Russia-Ukraine peace deal with major U.S.-Russian business ventures.
I mean, Russia's resources are highly attractive, and you have a transactional president who doesn't really care for or appreciate the importance of the existing international security.
It seems that Zelensky's being increasingly pulled in opposite directions. As with the peace plan announced in Geneva, the Europeans are not happy with the kind of deals being made between the U.S. and Russia. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski addressed the news.
Poland will not participate in the peddling of Ukrainian land. We will review such matters, not endorse them.
Witkoff and Kushner are reportedly scheduled to present a draft plan of Sunday's peace proposal to Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Tuesday.
That's the Kremlin's goal. That's been the Kremlin's goal for the last 100 years. Create transatlantic disunity, create fissures between Europe and the United States. So Putin is just sitting back eating popcorn, thrilled to watch that. Mission accomplished.
And these negotiations don't come at an easy time for Zelensky, as he and his government are doing their best to distance themselves from a multi-million-dollar corruption scandal that led Zelensky's closest aide and chief of staff to resign on Friday.
The office of the President of Ukraine will be rebooted. The head of the office, Andriy Yermak, has submitted a resignation letter.
Zelensky also announced on X on Sunday that he was naming Ukraine's former ambassador to the U.S., Oksana Markarova, as his new advisor on reconstruction and investment. Markarova fell out of favor with the Trump administration and this summer was requested to leave by House Speaker Mike Johnson.
We're facing this, both of these issues at the exact same time. So you're quite literally in the most pivotal moment, one of the most pivotal moments in modern Ukrainian history.
As the political situation develops, Russia continues to apply growing pressure on the front lines and on civilian targets. Overnight, a Russian drone struck a residential building in Kyiv, burning down 6 floors, killing 1 person and injuring dozens. But not all is lost, as Zelensky's diplomatic defensive now takes him to Europe, where support remains strong. He'll visit French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on Monday. A statement from the Élysée Palace says the two leaders are to discuss conditions of a just and durable peace.
Ukraine is not in such a desperate position that they really need to agree to terms that would essentially punish them after this. And I think that this is going to be a feat of strength in diplomacy as European leaders meet, both with President Zelensky and amongst themselves in an EU format.
Also on Monday, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte will host Ukraine's Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal at NATO's headquarters in Brussels in a meeting closed to the press, likely centered on the U.S. peace proposal. This ahead of a NATO foreign ministers meeting on December 3rd, a meeting which, unusually, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio plans to skip. For TVP World, I'm Conrad Gorlinski.
Their robots helped contain the infamous Notre Dame Cathedral blaze back in 2019. Now the Ukrainian frontline is next for a French firm aiming to help fight fires from Russia's daily strikes. And as Kyiv battles to reduce losses on the Eastern Front, the use of unmanned vehicles and technology has become more important than ever. Anastasia Yanchenko and Hubert Kishel have this exclusive report.
After over 3.5 years of war, the battlefield in Ukraine is increasingly defined by digital technology, with robots and unmanned systems appearing in growing numbers. As Russia targets Ukraine's frontline supply chains, the Pokrovsk region has seen the first mass use of unmanned ground vehicles to deliver supplies and evacuate the wounded. Experts say drones now handle around 90% of supply deliveries to the Pokrovsk frontline.
Drones are the only way to deliver supplies. Since both warring sides have established what is called a drone line, a death zone 20 to 30 kilometers deep, where the fighting units are constantly monitored by the occupying forces, this helps save the lives of civilians and volunteers.
On the front lines, many casualties occur during reconnaissance missions. To reduce these losses, Ukrainians are developing new technologies and tactics to support their armed forces and make such operations safer.
The military receive an assignment from their command to carry out reconnaissance using drones. They conduct a flight over the area they are interested in and upload the data from the flight into our system. And within 20 minutes to 2 hours, our system, our servers, generate these maps, 10 or 20 per map.
The maps display objects as small as 4 centimeters, the company's project manager says.
These maps also show concentrations of personnel, that is, the enemy, people and various equipment, ranging from small drones that are somewhere on the ground in this area, up to heavy equipment and air defense systems.
As Ukraine ramps up drone production, a French robotics firm is stepping in to help. Its robots were first used to contain the Notre Dame Cathedral fire back in 2019. Now the company has delivered 40 robots to Ukraine, which will help firefighters tackle blazes from daily Russian strikes.
We have had discussions with the Ukrainian CESU, the firefighters, where we were this week. They couldn't tell us for operational reasons the very details of how they use the robots, but they told us they use the 40 robots every day, obviously in bombed-out sites. And General Danik, the head of the CESU, told us that for sure the robots have had saved many lives of firefighters.
But Russia's operations are not limited to Ukraine. Moscow has been allegedly targeting NATO and EU assets through sabotage, drone incursions and airspace violations in the Baltic Sea area, raising concerns over the security of critical regional infrastructure.
We're just at the center of the goal of these robots, which is to protect critical infrastructure by protecting the first responders. And as for the Baltic Sea, well, of course, the robots will not go below the sea, right? They are ground robots, terrestrial machines, but clearly, anywhere there is a threat to critical infrastructure, these robots are at the right place.
As Russia continues its aggression against Ukraine, along with provocations against NATO member states, the demand for assistance from robots such as these is rapidly increasing.
As French supermarket giant Carrefour prepares to pull out of Poland, the race is on to snap up the retailer's assets. But with local competitors eyeing a deal, it's the Polish state that could come out on top amid a push to nationalise and rebrand the almost 800 outlets across the country. Marcin Zaborowski has more.
The race is on to find a buyer for French retail giant Carrefour's Polish assets. Companies from convenience store heavyweight Żabka to Geronimo Martin's, the parent company of supermarket chain Biedronka, are considered potential buyers. But there's another option on the table, a state takeover. Poland's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has recommended that the state-owned National Food Group take over Carrefour's Polish operations.
This is another step towards building our own supply chains, which will on the one hand strengthen the position of farmers and on the other guarantee consumers easy access to high-quality products from Polish crops and farms.
It could result in the nationalization and rebranding of Carrefour's almost 800 outlets in Poland, a collection of convenience stores, supermarkets, and hypermarkets. After close to 30 years of doing business in the country, Carrefour announced in September it is pulling out of the Polish market. Despite solid global revenue gains last year, Carrefour's Polish business has long struggled. Carrefour Poland's like-for-like sales, which strip away revenue from newly opened stores, fell 3% last year amid a 10% gain worldwide. At the same time, the company's retail presence in Poland has shrunk, with the number of stores falling below 800 for the first time in years. According to French news outlet LSA, Carrefour has never been profitable enough to compete with discount stores in Poland due to the latter's relative affordability and popularity with consumers. Poland isn't the only country where Carrefour is scaling back its operations or exiting entirely. Earlier this year, the company said it is pulling out from Italy, selling off its nearly 1,200 stores in the country to a private buyer. The coming weeks could determine whether Carrefour's Polish arm finds itself in the hands of a private buyer or the state. Marcin Zaborowski for TVP World.
Can you imagine holding your breath for more than 3 minutes in a tub of ice-cold water almost 2,000 metres above sea level? Well, I can barely get through that sentence, so no. But for one 60-year-old Polish man, that was all in a day's work as he set another Guinness World Record. Gabriela Fesnak explains.
3 minutes and 11 seconds on a single breath in a tub of ice-cold water, 1,883 meters above sea level. Stanisław Obieżałek, freediving world champion and multiple Guinness record holder, has just set his most impressive record yet.
I decided to set this record on a mountaintop. I knew oxygen levels were low at such altitudes, but I didn't expect them to be 40% lower.
The unexpectedly low oxygen level wasn't the only surprise for Obieżałek. Due to bad weather, the water temperature dropped to 1.8 degrees Celsius, more than 2 degrees lower than what he had prepared for.
Training sessions here at sea level took place in 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, and yesterday there was a strong wind on this mountain peak and it thinned out the air even more. I already had trouble replenishing my oxygen in the sauna. On top of that, the wind cooled the water to 1.8 degrees. I haven't even trained in water like that.
In less extreme conditions, the 60-year-old Obieżałek can spend up to 7 minutes underwater on a single breath, a skill honed through rigorous training of his diaphragm. But physical training is just one part of the preparation. According to Obieżałek, strengthening your mental endurance is just as important.
I can confidently say that 70% of this Guinness record was completed thanks to mental resilience, not a physical one. I was prepared physically, but had to maintain mental control over the entire situation. When diaphragm spasms begin in the human body, panic sets in, and that's when any normal person would get out of the water because they feel like they're drowning. But I can extend these diaphragm spasms, and I'm now immune to panic.
Obieżałek already has his sights set on breaking another record in March 2026. But first, he is looking forward to a well-deserved rest. For TVP World, Gabriela Fesnak.
We return now to our top story, the mooted return of artworks and artefacts that were taken by Nazi Germany during World War II. And joining me in the studio is TVP World's Europe Editor Marcin Zaborowski.
Hello, Aaron.
Marcin. So you've been speaking to diplomatic insiders this week. What do we know about this return of items looted from Poland many, many years ago?
So what we know is that this is really the start of a process. The start of a process meaning what will be announced tomorrow is what we have also reported on, but the archives of the Teutonic Knights and the head of the Saint Jacob will be officially returned in some kind of a ceremony which will take place tomorrow at 3 o'clock in Berlin, following the bilateral consultations. But importantly, this is really start of a process, and the German side will commit itself to actually go through the storages and also private collections in order to identify those artifacts which were stolen by the Nazis during the war.
So talk to me about how long officials have been working on behind the scenes on this handover, because obviously it doesn't happen overnight. You mentioned that officials are going to commit to going through that process. What have you heard?
Well, it's been a very, very long process. For example, the archives of Teutonic Knights, Poland has already issued a claim for that in 1948. So, like, 80 years later almost, we're probably gonna get it back. It's a very important piece of Poland's history. Teutonic Knights were here since 1226, so a very, very long time. And a sort of a disputed still chapter in Polish-Germanic relations, one might say.
I guess the real question that people will be wondering, is this a symbolic gesture? Or you mentioned the start of a process specific to these artefacts and artwork, but is it also a serious step towards better ties between Warsaw and Berlin?
Well, in that particular chapter on the return of stolen pieces of art, which symbolically is very important, we have a major breakthrough, I believe. I mean, what was declared to be returned tomorrow was something which was present in Polish media for a long time.
So you regard this as a big deal?
I think it's a very big deal. However, we are not going to get much of a break and big deal announcement on other issues concerning, for example, compensation for the victims of Nazi crimes, still living victims of Nazi crimes in Poland. This one is very unlikely to happen. And probably not much breakthrough in defense and security cooperation.
You mentioned war reparations there. I mean, this issue has repeatedly been regarded as closed by Berlin, but often the right side of politics here in Poland have brought it back into the discussion. You don't believe that a breakthrough will come this week, but can you ever see there being a breakthrough when it comes to these war reparations?
I don't know. I think with the time it's actually becoming more and more difficult, to be honest. I mean, there was a period of time that seemed more plausible because there was a certain unanimity on the German side as regards relations with Poland. Now this is broken because the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, has started playing anti-Polish card. And this is the largest opposition party. And that party raising anti-Polish sentiments could do the same thing to the German politics as Polish opposition playing on anti-German card, meaning that the room for maneuver for the current Polish government is actually more limited. So the Polish government is under pressure not to accept a certain gestures from the German side because they will be laughed at by the opposition. And as a consequence, the relationship is really suffering from that. And now we see that similar thing can be happening in Germany. So I'm not awfully really optimistic with this regard here.
I wanted to ask you about the politics of this, because does Poland in a way really want reparations, or is this about having the domestic debate about reparations? I mean, calling out the Germans winning, especially for the right political points. I mean, does Warsaw's political climate ultimately dictate relations with Berlin?
It's a very important element of that, but we can't put everything down to the fact that this is just some politicians scoring points. There is a certain perception in Poland, which is difficult to negate, that Poland has not been compensated for the losses incurred upon this nation during the Second World War. It's almost like impossible to put a price tag on that. Like 6 million people were killed, 20% of the entire nation. Yeah, the physical destruction of cities, like, you know, Warsaw, for example, it was like nothing here. It was like desert in 1945. That cost a lot of money. Then the whole generations of people who did not receive proper education. My dad, for example. My dad went to school on the 1st September 1939. It was meant to be his first day at school. He never got there because the warplanes started, flying over their heads, so they had to be returned home. And then he spent another 6 years somewhere in a countryside without education, just in a safety. And that's a gap which, was really created in lives of young people who could have become engineers, contributors to the civilizational advance of this country. It didn't happen. And how do you price it? In a sense, almost you don't. So yeah, I think that that some kind of a gesture, like generous gesture from the German side, is being called upon. But I think a part of the problem is that the German public opinion is actually unaware of the damage that has been afflicted on the Polish side. They know about the Holocaust, they know about the Russians, and it kind of, stops there. I don't think that this perception that, a lot of the horrible things happen towards Poland and also other nations is very much shared within the German public opinion.
And I assume that of your dad's generation, that there would be a large portion that would really be wanting war reparations precisely for that lived experience, right?
Well, yes, and of course, for these people it's justified because of the generational issues, but what we have seen recently for the opinion polls which have been coming out a month ago by the Institute for Public Affairs, for example, it looks like that the young generation of Poles is also feeling not treated justly by Germany for the reason of the lack of reparations. And anti-German sentiments in Poland have grown now to the level that we have not seen for 20 years.
Well, that brings me to my next question, because Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, is expected at this summit with Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz. I mean, have you seen, from your perspective, Poland move closer to Germany under Prime Minister Tusk? And does that mean, you mentioned defence cooperation earlier, does that mean that Poland could eventually develop some kind of closer defence cooperation, given Russia knocking on the eastern flank?
Well, I think this relationship under the Prime Minister Tusk is just more normal, in a sense that Prime Minister Tusk is never playing on anti-German card. He doesn't do that. In fact, he's accused by the opposition to be the German agent. Jarosław Kaczyński, the leader of the opposition, did say so explicitly in the parliament. He called Donald Tusk German agent. Well, obviously this is silly, this is laughable, but it does have an impact on the room of maneuver for the current government. The current government can be normal in its relationship towards Germany, do deals when they can do deals, but they wouldn't be going out of their way to reach some kind of a breakthrough in relationship with Germany. They are constrained. They are domestically constrained, and sadly, it looks like that the German government has not seized upon this opportunity to actually, declare some kind of a compensation, which could have changed the dynamic. And the consequence of that is also now we're losing a certain momentum, because the German elite, as I said at the beginning, is also now familiarizing itself with anti-Polish sentiments.
And we're running out of time, but very briefly, is there one thing that either side can do to, shall we say, lighten that burden, that load of history? Is there something Germany can do that you think would really shift the dial?
Well, I think two things. Number one, it's actually declare a generous compensation package for the living victims of the Nazi crimes, and actually prioritize it. There have been some possible announcements. The sum of 200 million euro was mentioned, but when you think about like the damage inflicted upon these people, that's a laughable amount, frankly. Yeah. So the Polish government would never accept anything that that kind of a pitiful kind of a money. So that I think that the German side needs to get out of its way to increase that amount very, very considerably. That's number one. And number two, think about defense cooperation in terms of also technology sharing. Something like, doing joint projects and do not treat that, defense cooperation in the same way as you'd be treating, I don't know, relationship with Mexico, for example, yeah? Or some faraway countries. This is a country whose security and defense was destroyed by the Second World War. Then it lived through the years of communism, which much of Germany didn't. So there are consequences of that.
An excellent news break, Marcin. And of course, you can read more at tvpworld.com. TVP World Europe Editor Marcin Zaborowski, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.